Hello everyone, Anthrage Stormrider here with the Bloody Point with another video on Conqueror's Blade. Conqueror's Blade recently exited its open beta phase and is now in its closed beta phase for this week. Today I'm going to talk about owning Fiefs and the benefits thereof. You can access the Fief interface for the Fief you're in at the Warden. You can also go to the map and browse to the Fief in question. And indeed, Fief is how it's pronounced, not Fife. So you find the one that you own by clicking on the map. There are tools on the left side, as you can see, to turn on various filters. In this case, I can turn on loyalty. You can see that our house, Alicia, owns Kisten Plum. With this interface, you can see the level and various other bits of information. Now, owning a Fief or a Fief, see now I'm doing it, has a bunch of benefits. One of which is you can get a discount on harvesting local resources. As you can see here in the ownership interface, the overview has all kinds of bits of information showing what particular local infrastructure there is and what the settings are. Allowance of collecting resources, passing through with transit and so on. You also have taxation rates. Tax is collected both on people using services in the Fief and also when they collect from the resource nodes in your territory. And you'll see that we collected certain amounts of funds from uses of those camps, the copper mine, the logging camp, and the cotton field. Now, it also generates silver, which can be used by the house for various things. And you have the ability to level these up by collecting building materials. Building materials are acquired by doing the Fief quests. Leveling your house and your Fief up is important as it determines, among other things, who can attack you. So here you see a list of the Fief quests. You'll see that they have specific resources they're looking for. Not only specific resources, but in some cases specific types. So for cotton, for example, it is looking for a very specific type of cotton, which I'll show you in a moment. Here you can see the rewards. You have the house XP, which levels your house. The house level determines what Fiefs you can attack, what level they are. Then you have the prestige, which is used for warring. Of course, honor, which is used various ways. You also get items through this. Sometimes it's gear, sometimes it's unit gear. And then the building materials, as I said, which is needed for maintaining the prosperity of your Fief. Prosperity is a bit complicated. So, as I mentioned, you have specific resources that you need to collect. In this case, cotton has different types. Here we want long cotton. So the first order of business when you're setting out to do these Fief quests is identifying the resource nodes on the map that have the resource type that you want. And of course you want something close by if possible. Here we see this rough cotton field, which is close, has the wrong type, so that's no good to us. We need to find long cotton. In some cases, the icons are close to the place names, so you want to turn the names off and turn some of the other icons off so you can mouse over them and get the information you need. These filters are pretty useful. Here we see coarse cotton, rough cotton. I'm looking for long cotton. I know there's one around here somewhere. One thing to note is that the different resource nodes have different qualities or rarities, as you can see represented by the color, and gathering from these has a cost associated with it, a silver or bronze cost, which goes up with the rarity. It also goes up, of course, if you're gathering outside of your own area, your own Fief. So you can see there's a tariff cost here for gathering from there. So you need the coin as well before you set out. It's very important that you collect everything that you need before going out, because you use up food traveling and you don't want to travel a distance for no reason. So looking through the quests we have here, we're going to identify all the different resources that we want. Typically there are 4 which are resource types of different types that you can gather, and then we have the rebel related quests for the bounties. These for completion require items that you get in drops, random drops, when you destroy the rebel camp or the rebels or whatever it happens to be. You collect these over time. You're not going to get all that you need from one mission. And again, these return particular amounts of rewards. So once you have all that information, you are ready to plan out your route across the map. Again, the building materials are a unique resource you can only get through doing these quests. So that's something if you're playing, in release, when you have to maintain your holdings through a long period of time and level them up, you're going to want to do that. So now that we know that what we need, we would figure out our route. Again, the way it works in this game is when you step outside the blue bordered area, you begin to consume food. So generally, the first thing you want to do is make sure that you have a wagon with you that's full of food and that your food stock is fully filled, so that as you're traversing the map, you won't run out of food, which the effects in that are a debuff on your damage from your units, and they take more damage. Speaking of units, when collecting resources, the different unit types have different abilities in regards to how much they can collect. So the low-level units, the villager class, as you can see here, these four, the village watchmen, the serfs, the farmers, and the woodcutters, I believe, as well. These guys are the ones you want to gather with. They have gathering bonuses available. The thing is, they're not all the same. So, for example, we're going to look at the tenant farmers. The way these are done is you level up the units in combat, and you get veterancy bonus points, and you spend them to unlock this tech tree. Now you can see here, we're going to see increases the head count and increases collected resources. So those are the important ones for the purposes of gathering open world resources. So to be maximally efficient, especially since leveling these low-level units up in combat is difficult, you want to find the unit that requires the fewest possible veterancy points to get through the tree to the nodes you want. And in that case, I've identified that as the serf. So as you can see here, previously it was 9 nodes you had to unlock for the other unit. This one is only 5. Well, 6 actually, if you count the first one. And that will increase the unit count by 4 twice, so 40 total, and give you another 40% gathered resources. All right, so now that we've figured that out, we're going to want to exit the starting of the NPC town here and go out into the world and travel to our local fief and collect the resources as close to it as possible to reduce food usage and travel time. Now, the first thing you need to do is go to the building officer and sort out your wagon. That would mean either transferring resources to it or from it, depending on what you have locally stored in your camp. In this case, I've already transferred everything I have that I might need to the wagon, but you'll see here you can just click in one window and transfer it to the other. I find the best thing to do is click transfer and then adjust the unit, or rather the item counts on all of them and transfer it all at once, so you don't have to do it one at a time. There is a bug currently at this stage where the fief operations are not working correctly. That's being worked on right now, but I already transferred the thing, so I don't have to worry about that. To leave a fief, you would go to the watchman. Currently, for some players, that is bugged, as I mentioned. I prepared this in advance, so I already was able to leave and collect that information. But if you were doing this in real time, this is how you would do it. You would travel to the watchman NPC, you would click him and do leave fief, and then of course you would be able to go out into the open world. You would choose your units in your warband to fill out your unit count, and you would need the serfs or whatever you're using for collection. Okay, so as I mentioned, I previously prepared this, so we're going out into the world, and we are going to collect those resources that we previously identified. I have my food bar, as you can see, mostly full, and I have food in my wagon. I can also stop on the way at resource nodes that produce food, such as this one up here on the left. Now, farming from these, it varies depending on what territory you're in, but generally speaking, you get 1 per day for free. Now, free meaning that you don't need to use the requisition tokens that you get, which are limited in supply. You can pay the cost depending on what it is and whatever holding you are, and you're able to harvest from those resources. So you have to plan ahead as regards food, for having coin, as well as those needed requisitions to make sure that you can collect what you need. So here we're at the goat skin tannery. Goat hide is one of the things that we needed to complete the Fief quest. I'm going to collect some of that now. I'm getting the primary resource that I need, the goat hide itself, and the quantity again determined by, among other things, the NPC that you're using, the unit, in this case the serfs, as I said. You can see that represented by the labor stat in the access requirements down at the bottom right. I'm also getting listed in the possible result products of these rare products. You see I got a little bit there. This stuff is used in crafting, so I got sinews, bison hide, and goat hide. The sinews and bison hide are the RNG controlled ones. So I have one of the needed resources for a particular quest. I have a insufficient quantity. If you don't have enough quantity from one pull, you may have to go to another one or use the same one. If you use the same one, of course, you're using up your free per day, and you're going to have to use one of the tokens. As you can see in the quest indicator, it showed that quest as being complete. I have to go back to the Fief to complete it and turn it in, rather. But first we're going to try and collect the other ones on the way. I had looked at the map previously and identified this cluster of nodes as being optimally efficient in terms of proximity. So as you can see, the goats and the cotton are close to each other, so I don't have to travel and waste time. Again, this is a long cotton field. It's a very specific type of cotton. You don't want to accidentally collect, say, rough cotton and go back all the way to your fief to turn it in and find out you have the wrong type. So that's it for comparison. Coarse cotton, as you can see, the ash logging camp is something else I need to hit. And once I have these collected, I'll be able to go all the way up to where my fief actually is and turn those in. But for now, we're concerned only with cotton, so I'm going to collect that. Requisition tariff 1500. The tariff, as you can see, is the cost in bronze in this case that you would need to pay to be able to collect. If you don't have the coin, you're going to have to earn it first by doing matches, battle matches, and quests in the NPC starting town or in your fief if you own one. The tokens that you can use to get past the daily limit of one pull per day, the yield, those are earned through rewards. So you can't actually buy them, I don't believe. You have to earn them, so you really have to be careful on how you use those so that you don't run out. So I have my needed cotton in my wagon, and then we're going to go ahead and move on to the next item. Conqueror's Blade is interesting in that it's kind of like a house or apartment that you see from the outside, and you think it's a particular size, and you get inside and the interior space seems bigger than it looked from the outside. There's a lot of content, a lot of depth here that's somewhat hidden, and it's not obvious from the outside what is available to do. Some people I've seen are complaining about a lack of content. Well, there's a lot of content there. You just have to find it and take the necessary steps to access it, such as taking control of a fief so you can access all of these different quests and whatnot. So we need to progress to the next location. We've looked at the quest to see what our progress is. We're going to go ahead and collect the next item. Now, something interesting to note, you can see another player here doing something similar, I imagine. Something to note is that I'm doing this during quote-unquote peacetime. There's no territory war window going on right now, no sieges happening, and it's during the open beta, or rather the closed beta in this case, and there are not a lot of players on. There's no real competition for these resources. A lot of territory is not controlled. It's AI controlled, not owned by players. But in the full release game, it's going to be a completely different situation. In order to compete with your fellow houses, the other houses, you're going to want to do things like interrupt their resource collection. If I'm out in the world collecting resources to level up my house and or my fief, someone is going to want to stop me from doing that. If I'm their neighbor and I'm competing for territory or competing with them just in general. So this particular operation I'm undertaking here, traveling around the land, crossing borders and whatnot, would be a completely different situation. These other players that you would see in some cases could attack you and A, interrupt your gathering process, and B, perhaps, depending on the rules that are involved, actually get some of those resources. So it's a lot more complex than it looks. This is an actual open world. There's no restrictions on combat. I could, if I wanted, turn around and attack that guy, and depending on what units I brought with me, I'd have a chance of defeating him. So here we see, I've run out of bronze coins rather, and in order to pay the tariff, I need to dip into my silver. Again, these nodes have a chance for the rarer items. You can see here in the possible result window on the right, you have 4 different things that you could get aside from the primary resource, which is oak in this case. Again, those things are going to come into play when you're doing crafting. Some of these will be available through other means, through the market and whatnot, but most of that will be provided by players, and this is where you need to get that stuff in the first place. Now, I have forgotten that I can level up my tech tree for resource collection. I have collection XP, which you see there, 2947, which is acquired by doing harvesting. So again, going back to the whole complexity thing, you really have to investigate everything, look at all the interface, click on all the links, and see what's what. To be maximally efficient, you're going to want to do things like invest points in the tech tree for resource gathering. I did not do that previously, but now I'm going to. The game is really, quite complex. Sometimes I'm reminded of Age of Empires, for example, when I'm looking at all these different unit trees, the tech trees, the units now, their assignments, in terms of their region of origin, I suppose, or their nationality, have been changed somewhat. There is some region locking for units, which I'll show in another video, where if you're in a particular region, you can't natively pull the unit gear you need to build the unit from the market. You have to actually craft it manually, or you'd have to go into another region and build it there and bring it back. So I've invested some of my collection points into the tech tree for resource gathering, and that means my efficiency will go up a little bit. Let's see, you can see there my travel path back up to our holding, looking at the local resources just to identify if there's anything close by that I can harvest from. In some cases you will be able to pull a resource you need from a lower rarity or lower quality, a different color node, and it'll be cheaper. For purposes of quest completion as opposed to item crafting, you don't necessarily need the higher quality rarity stuff, and there's no need to pay more for it if you don't have to. One other note about this is that some of the resource nodes, this is beta after all, and we're still testing. Some of the resource nodes are mislabeled, or they produce the wrong resource type. So for example, I had an experience recently where I went to a granite node to collect granite for the quest, and when I spent the coin for the tariff and whatnot, I found out to my surprise that it actually produced limestone. Now, that's a bad thing if you're looking for granite. It could be a good thing if you're looking for limestone and there's no limestone nodes closer. So that'll all get sorted out by release, I imagine, but in the meantime, you need to be careful and keep an eye on that. Be aware of what nodes are where, what they say they produce, and what they actually produce. Again, I suppose it's a bug, but it's a feature in a way that it gives some value to actually traveling in the world to these nodes, manually, and collecting that information for yourself. Going back to the whole idea of competition between houses, having players who are out there in the world and doing this kinds of exploration is a value. So if you're a person, for example, in MMOs who isn't really into PvP, and you tend to craft or harvest or just explore, there are things for you to do in the game. So we're going to continue on here with the quest gathering. You'll notice that I have a couple question marks next to some of the quests showing that they are completed. I've done the cotton, goat hide, and oak. Remaining to do is the granite quest. Given the distance in this case to the granite nodes, we're going to go ahead and skip that for now. I do have the rebel quests that I could do. Some of these can be done by collecting the needed items through just open world rebel bands roaming around. In other cases, you need to do the actual rebel camps. These camps have, requirements. You need a rebel suppression order in order to do those. You get that by doing some of the quests. Oh, so here you can see I ran out of food. Fortunately, I had some food in my wagon, so I was able to use that. Here we go, passing in someone else with the wagon, collecting stuff. Same guy as earlier. Now, the food management situation is a little bit tricky. You have to be really careful, because if you get caught in enemy territory with no food, you can still move, but if you end up fighting, you will be at a disadvantage, which is bad. So again, we are proceeding to the next resource node. In fact, I think we're just going to go straight home and turn these in. You'll see all these different holdings, and it identifies, who owns it, what house it is, and so on. I'm freely traveling through these areas that are shown on the map with the borders that are owned by other players, but in release, these will be patrolled. They'll be actively patrolled in some cases. There will be different costs associated with gathering. It could be the case that someone will simply deny the ability to harvest resources in their region. And if you're careful, you can play that game strategically too, where you can essentially starve a house out from being able to level themselves up or meet their needs. And these resources, they're used for quests in this case, but these are the resources that are also used for creating unit gear. And in some cases, creating unit gear is really expensive. So cavalry is a good example. The horses can be collected in the open world, but if I take all the territories near the horse resource nodes and I lock them out, I prevent people from harvesting them, that's a problem. You could literally deny your enemy a particular unit type, which is amazing. Again, speaking to the level of complexity in the game. Now, of course, you're denying them in the short term. They can take the territory from you and liberate that resource. They could also expend the effort to travel to another region, in some cases anyway, and collect those things there. A word on the rebels. You can see there are rebels here that I'm going to be passing on my trip. Most of these will not aggressively attack you when you get within range, but some of them will. There are different icons above their heads which designate the different types, and you have to watch out for that, because you don't want to get caught and lose all your hard work. You won't lose everything in your wagon, but there are some negatives to losing a battle, of course. We're getting the pop-up messages. I've consumed half my food supply. I am approaching the border to friendly territory, however, so you'll see, if you look there, my food is going down at a particular rate. Once I cross the border, that will stop, and the timer will stop ticking down, and the amount will stop ticking down. There's a little trick I figured out. If you're low on food, you can travel through territory with no food, no problem. But it's only in combat where it becomes a factor. So if your bar is completely empty when you enter into combat, those are when the debuffs will apply. So what you can do is, if you're low on food, is leave a small amount or even 1 unit of food in your wagon, and then if you get caught just before combat is engaged, apply that food to your bar. The debuff will go away. If you move, it will count down, but if you're stationary, it won't get used. So you can, in that way, avoid the debuff. Okay, so I'm crossing the border here. You're going to notice that the counter is going to stop going down. It's going to freeze the food exhaustion meter, and we're no longer consuming food. And of course, once you're in your territory, you can go back to your main holding, your fief, and restock food there. You'll need coin to do that, but it's cheaper than if you did it in a holding that you didn't own. So pulling up to our fief, you can see here that it's level 4. Level 2, I believe, rather. As you can see, I've restocked my food. It was much cheaper than if I had done it elsewhere. There are rewards to owning it for the house. Those are controlled or accessed by the house leader. I'm going to enter here and complete the quests. Again, I could do these quests for any fief. I'm doing them locally for the fief that our house owns, because the rewards and the benefits are applied specifically to the holding and the house locally, and that's of some benefit. The houses, have a particular layout. So similar houses, rather the holdings, they have the same layout, depending on which one you go to that is of the same type. So here we go. I have the cotton, the goat hide, and the wood one complete. You'll notice that there's the house XP meter and the tithes or tis. Before I complete it, it's a certain value. I'm going to go ahead and complete that and show the difference. I also have the coin and honor amounts there. Those will increase when I turn these in. So you have options other than queuing for matches to do these things. And again, if you're not a PvP person, you have these other paths to those resources or rewards. So I've turned it in. I get the reward. Now you notice that in the top right it says quests done this week. You can only do 20 per person of these quests for all of the fiefs. It's not per fief. That's important to keep track of, because the storehouse reward, the building materials, can only be acquired through this. So if you need to meet a quota, or if you're trying to level up, you need to make sure that you have enough people doing those quests, and they're of the specific type that gives those rewards in order to actually get it done. Now the daily, I believe, is 1,500 upkeep, or that's weekly rather, sorry. In order to either not have your prosperity go down, or to make sure that it goes up. That's very dangerous, because if it goes down to 0, you will lose a level in that fief level, which means more people can attack you, because house level controls what level holdings you can attack. So that's important to keep an eye on. So I've completed those quests, turned them in. I have 520 done. You could, when you're in the area, do other quests, the rebel ones, for example, and get rewards as well. Those produce more rewards for the building materials. So that's a little overview of the various things that are involved in doing fief quests and fief ownership in general, as well as resource gathering. I hope you're enjoying the beta as much as I am. I can't wait for this to release. I will have more content in the future, and I hope you enjoy it.